Hi, I'm Liam.
And this is Steph, and we'll be talking to you about
Leisure activities and social lives of the civilians in the early 20th century.
back in the day, life was all about status.
There were very definite class barriers dividing the rich from the poor and often with the middle class between them. This class system very much affected what leisure activities were popular at the time.
All classes had different activities, which usually symbolised the wealthy class.
Leisure activities a century ago were more about looking good and showing off your wealth.
Then having fun and enjoying what you do, unlike today. AFL
Or VFL back in the day.
is a great example of a long-lasting sport. It combines fun and enjoyment.
Class and style.
The first recorded game of Australian football
Was on a tree-dotted parkland outside the Melbourne Cricket Ground in 1858.
Back in the day, many people went to church. Usually the wealthier people went to church as they could afford it better. Church was a part of many people's lives as they went to church every Sunday. In the early 20th century, a certain sense of status was determined on where you lived on the hills. If you lived on or near the bottom of the hills, you were considered poorer. Hence, if you lived near or on top of the hills, you were known as being wealthy and prosperous. Living at the bottom hill meant that there is a high chance of flooding, and you are further away from people and shops up top. Generally, living closer to the Yarra and further away from people meant it was cheaper land to buy or rent, which benefited the poorer people. In contrast, living up top of the hills was much more expensive as more people wanted to live there, and the living on top meant you could easily go to the shops, see friends, and attend church. Living on top of the hills gave people status and represented their wealth.
In general, the wealthier children had to follow what activities their parents did, like going to church and having picnics, but the less fortunate children were allowed to go out the streets, and they played many different activities with all the other children.
In the early 1900s, children were expected to entertain themselves. There was not much money for pricey toys, and the adults were usually away, too busy to set up for any of the children. Throughout the early 20th century, there was little or no traffic. So the street was a playground for many children. The roads, the pavement, and the small front gardens.
Many boys played marbles. The boys would flip the marbles against their first finger and thumb, and score if they got their marble into the gully. Some boys were very proud of their marble collection and would swap themselves to get a range of different sizes and colours. Most of the marbles were beautiful and were made of glass, twisted with markings inside.
Children also played with hoop. There were wooden ones in the various sizes for girls with sticks to bang them along the pavement. The boys had different hoops made out of iron. Hopscotch was another popular activity. For playing hopscotch, the concrete pavement were marked out with chalk. Mainly hopscotch was a game for girls to play.
Conkers was another major activity. It was an autumn game. Conkers fell off the trees. Boys would select their firm ones and make a hole in them. Then they would thread conkers onto a piece of string, about a foot long. Conkers were played in pairs. The aim of the game was to swing your conker to hit the opponent's one. The game ended when one conker broke. Then the unbroken was declared the winner. Other entertaining activities included cricket, football, leapfrog, and bicycle riding.
Made a series of activities to encourage believers carry on missionary movement of Christian doctrine. At the same time, support them not to lose hope and confidence to their country in difficult war days. During World War I, the church has played an important role. They called on Christians to join the war, encouraging them to struggle for their country and king. For the specific contribution people, they made an honor roll to prize those who played their part for king and country in the war of 1940 to 1980.